This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nita Hone, and it's Monday, and that means it's time for the 581st MTG Top 10. In this series, I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition, and today, we're looking at 0/1 creatures. Over the years, I've looked at a lot of stat lines in this series, and eventually I'd like to get to all of them, so we're checking another one off of the list today. Obviously enough, as 0/1 is one of the absolute worst starting stat lines a creature can have. If that's all a creature has going on, even if it costs 0 mana, it isn't very good. But there are actually many 0/1 creatures that have seen significant play in competitive Magic. This is because they're often quite cheap, so adding some additional effects to a 0/1 creature can actually result in something quite powerful, especially for the mana investment. As a result, this list is much more stacked than you might think. The number 10 card has 21 points, and the top 3 cards all have over 250. To be eligible for this list, obviously a creature had to have 0 power and 1 toughness. In all, there were 114 creatures that met this requirement, and in this video we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, this includes events like Pro Tours, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point, this includes events like Regional Championships. Alright, let's dive into the list. At number 10, it is Ignoble Hierarch. This 1-mana 0/1 comes with Exalted, which means that it gives +1/+1 to a creature you control when it attacks alone. This can include itself, so it can in fact attack as a 1/2. Additionally, it's a mana dork that can tap for 1 of the 3 Jund colors of mana. This card does a good job of illustrating what can make a 0/1 good. It has 2 really good abilities for any 1-mana card to have, so you actually end up feeling like you come out way ahead on mana with this card, even if it is a 0/1. Pretty much every 1-mana creature that can tap for mana sees play, as accelerating into your 3 drops a full turn earlier is a big deal. Ignoble Hierarch was printed in Modern Horizons 2, which means it was never legal in formats like Standard and Pioneer, but it has seen plenty of play in Modern and Legacy to make up for that. In Modern, it's done the most work in Yawgmoth decks. This is a combo deck built around Yawgmoth's ability to put -1/-1 counters on creatures with Undying, which removes their +1/+1 counter, allowing you to sacrifice them repeatedly, and Ignoble Hierarch can get you there a full turn earlier. In Legacy, it sees play in Goblin Tribal and Maverick. In both formats, it's likely to gain more points in the future, and it's pretty much a lock to continue to move up this list. At number 9, it is Blood Artist. This makes it so that whenever another creature or it dies, you drain your opponent 1 life. This is particularly powerful in a sacrifice deck, which can trigger this type of ability several times a turn, while also generating additional value. And those are exactly the kinds of decks the artist has been played in over the years. In both Standard and Legacy, it was played in zombie decks that could repeatedly sacrifice Gravecrawler and return it to play, allowing Blood Artist to rapidly drain the opponent out. And in Historic, it sees play in Jund sacrifice decks that combine the artist with something like Mayhem Devil to quickly kill the opponent with a few sacrifices. Modern is where it's seen the most play recently, and it's also its most successful format these days. Like Ignoble Hierarch, Blood Artist sees play in the format's Yawgmoth decks. Once you have Blood Artist, Yawgmoth, and 2 creatures with Undying in play, you can just go off. Blood Artist keeps you from dying as a result of paying life for Yawgmoth while also draining out the opponent. Blood Artist is going to continue to see play in Modern in the future. At number 8, it is Steplinks. This 1-mana 0/1 isn't usually a 0/1 because it gets +2/+2 until end of turn when a land enters the battlefield under your control. This often means it's a 2/3 on your turn, and it can be significantly larger when combined with multiple land drops from things like fetch lands. Unsurprisingly, it's gained all of its points in aggro decks in Standard, Extended, Modern, and Legacy. In Standard, it was mostly played in Boros Landfall, an aggro deck that was all about triggering landfall as much as possible. In Extended and Legacy, it's been played in White Weenie and Zoo decks, respectively, and in Modern, it was played in Boros Aggro and Death Shadow. However, the Lynx hasn't gained points anywhere since 2016, and in the long run, there's a good chance it won't be able to hold on to a spot on this list. At number 7, it's Cloudfin Raptor. This is a 1-mana 0/1 with flying, but it comes with Evolve, which means it doesn't stay a 0/1 for long. Anytime a creature with higher power or toughness enters the battlefield, the Raptor gets a +1/+1 counter. This generally means if you're curving out, it gets a +1/+1 counter every turn, so you actually end up with a very efficient creature for your 1 mana investment. It gained all of its points in Standard Devotion to blue decks and hasn't gained points anywhere since 2014, which probably means it won't be on the list for that much longer. At number 6, it is Voracious Hydra. I considered for a little bit whether I wanted to include this since it's virtually never a 0/1, but that's kind of true of many cards on this list, so I thought it made sense to leave it here in the end. Anyway, this 0/1 has Trample and enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, and you get one of two options when it enters the battlefield. It either doubles its +1/+1 counters or fights another creature. So if you need to kill something, it can do it, and if you want a huge Trampler, well, it can fill that role too. When it was in Standard, green was hands down the strongest color, thanks to the presence of cards like Oko and Veil of Autumn. Voracious Hydra went along for the ride, seeing play in lots of Simic Food, Ramp, and Control decks. After Oko got banned, it didn't see nearly as much play, but you could still find it in green aggro decks. It's also found a lot of success in Pioneer Devotion to green decks, which look to produce a ton of mana with Nykthos. The Hydra is a nice place to spend that mana, and it also helps you produce more mana because it adds 2 to your green devotion. It's going to keep seeing play in Pioneer going forward. At number 5, it is Chanted Swarm. This 1 mana 0/1 comes with flying, and when it attacks, the defending player can't cast spells this turn. I actually really like this card as it has a really simple and flavorful design. While the Swarm might not be able to do much damage to your opponent, it is super annoying, so much so that it distracts them from being able to do anything during your turn. The Swarm didn't see any play in Standard or Extended, but since 2007, it's played an important role in combo decks in the Eternal formats, and especially in Legacy. Combo decks love the idea that the opponent can't cast anything during their turn, because they usually go off in a single turn and win the game. In those decks, Chanted Swarm helps protect the combo from your opponent. This is a role it's going to continue to fill in Legacy, and to a lesser extent in Vintage. At number 4, it is Signal Pest. This 1 mana 0/1 comes with Battle Cry, which means anytime it attacks, your other creatures get +1/+0. That doesn't sound like an amazing ability to have on a 0/1, since it would normally just die in combat, but Signal Pest has another ability that makes it a lot more challenging. It can't be blocked by creatures except those with flying or reach. This means it can attack without fear of being blocked on many board states. Over the years, the Pest has seen play in Artifact aggro decks in multiple formats. In Block and Standard, it was played in Tempered Steel decks, which look to go really wide with efficient artifact creatures and buff them, and having both the Pest and Tempered Steel around meant your board was very easily lethal in most cases. In Modern, it was part of Affinity decks for a very long time, which could slap Cranial Plating on the Pest, making it a massive problem even when it was alone. Affinity decks don't really exist in Modern anymore though, and Signal Pest doesn't have any points since 2019. At number 3, it is Noble Hierarch. This is the card that Ignoble Hierarch was designed after. Like Ignoble Hierarch, it costs 1 green mana for a 0/1 with Exalted, but instead of tapping for 1 of the Jund colors of mana, the Noble Hierarch taps for 1 of the Bant colors of mana. This Hierarch also does a ton for 1 mana. It was of course heavily played in Standard, but it's seen continuous play in Modern ever since being printed. In Modern, it's pretty much the mana dork of choice, giving it an absolutely massive score in the format. Over the years, it's been a key card in decks like Birthing Pod, Humans, and Infect. It can be particularly nice in Infect decks, as those decks often attack with a lone Infect creature anyway, so in addition to getting some extra mana to work with, it also makes the opponent get poison counters even faster. It has also put up some points in both Legacy and Vintage. In Legacy, it's been played in a wide variety of green decks, including Infect, Allurin, and Maverick, and in Vintage, it's primarily been seen in Hate Bear decks. Noble Hierarch is going to continue to gain points in the future, and in the long run, it has a very real chance at eventually surpassing the number 2 card on the list, which is Birds of Paradise. The birds are one of Magic's original 0/1 creatures, since it was printed in Magic's first set ever. It's also one of the game's original mana dorks. It's a 1 mana 0/1 with flying that can tap for 1 mana of any color. It has been continuously played ever since being printed, gaining at least 1 point every year since competitive Magic began in 1994. We don't need to go deep in all the different decks the bird's been played in, as that would be an incredibly long and boring video, but suffice it to say, it's been helping green decks get things out a turn early for a very, very long time, and it's going to keep doing it. All that said, it has lost ground to Noble Hierarch over the years, as the Hierarch now sees more play than the birds do these days in all formats, and within the next few years, I think Birds of Paradise will probably drop to number 3 on this list. And at number 1, it's Tarmagoif. Once considered the best creature in Magic, Tarmagoif starts out as a 2-mana 0/1, but its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. In most formats, graveyards are easy to rapidly fill, leading to Tarmagoif often giving you an absolutely massive creature that is capable of dodging a wide swath of cheap removal spells while attacking incredibly hard. It has just recently become an even better card now that the battle card type has been introduced, allowing Tarmagoif's maximum size to increase to 8/9. While it is just a vanilla creature in many ways, it is one that scales as the game goes on, and it's virtually always a threat, and virtually always the largest creature on the battlefield. Tarmagoif's efficiency has allowed it to have sustained success ever since being printed. While you might be hard-pressed today to convince someone that Tarmagoif is still the game's best creature, it is still a very powerful one that continues to see play in Modern, Legacy, and Vintage, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So, those are the top 10 0/1 creatures in Magic. If you're interested in owning any of these surprisingly powerful creatures, check out the description, where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in the video. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to catch up on past MTG Top 10s, including many more that look at creature stat lines, you should see the playlists on your screen shortly. Lastly, if you want to go the extra mile in supporting me and the channel, you can do that by becoming a patron or a channel member. You can find ways to do those things in the description. Thanks for watching.